You.
No.
No, you're very good, you.
No.
You are very good,
There's
you.
a lot more to it than that.
You're very good, you.
There are underlying things
You understand me? No, you're right. You're right on the money.
What's happening, guys? Supernova here, back with another video, and this is going to be my review/reaction of HBO's, or HBO Max's rather, The Last of Us. And just to let you know right now, this is not going to be a spoiler-free review. I'm going to be discussing all aspects of this episode, so if you're looking for a spoiler-free reaction or review, this is not the video for you. That being said, let's get into this video. And I'm not going to bury the lead here. The episode was great. It was really, really good. Now, is it fucking 10 out of 10, masterpiece, greatest thing you've ever seen on TV? Like you see some people saying? No. The episode is not perfect. There are issues that I personally have with the show, or things that I think were maybe decisions that were made that I wish were not made, or things that I wish were done a little differently, and I'll get into all that. But overall, that being said, fuck man, this was a really, really good episode, and I honestly think, for me, this is the most faithful adaptation of a video game that I've seen. It really is. I don't think I've seen any other TV show or movie that has as faithfully adapted the source material as this show has, which is great. And I think a lot of that has to do with having Neil Druckmann come and help work on this show, right? Which is fucking smart. Like, that's the way you should be doing it. The people that made the game already did a fantastic job. Why not take some of the people responsible for making that game, bring them over to help work on the show? And I think that marrying of the two, the fruit that bears is undeniable, because at almost any point in time during this 90-minute episode, I could pause the screen, and what would be on screen is clearly something from The Last of Us. Like, it looks and feels and oozes The Last of Us. So in that aspect, they absolutely 100% nailed the feeling of this world, and making it feel like the video game. And another thing which I think works in the show's favor is the fact that it is a show, right? It's a show and not a movie. I made a video way back in the early days of my channel where I said that we shouldn't want an Uncharted movie, because I felt that there was no way you could take a 12 to 15 hour story experience in-game and then have that translate into a 1.5 hour, 2 hour movie. Like, it's just not going to have the same impact as experiencing 12 to 15 hours with these characters, 12 to 15 hours in this world. So the fact that this is a show and not a movie already, I think for me, was going to be a huge thumbs up. Another great aspect of the show is, for me, the cast actually does a really good job. The casting was done really, really well. And this was something that I was worried about, right? I felt that Pedro Pascal is great, but is he going to be a good Joel? I already wasn't happy with the fact that they were race-swapping Joel, Tommy, and Sarah. I felt that was unnecessary. I don't like when characters are race-swapped, especially if there's no reason for it, right? Like, race-swapping them from being white to being Hispanic does nothing to positively impact the show. At the same time, it doesn't negatively impact the show, but the change is there for what purpose? And the only purpose that I could think of is to, for them to say, hey, diversification. Hey, look, we've got more people of color on this show. And I'll tell you right now, as a half Hispanic, I could give zero fucks about there being more Hispanic representation in this show. I want the characters and the live adaptations of the games that I've played and loved to look like the characters in the games that I've played and loved. I also was very unsure of the casting of Bella Ramsey as Ellie, because as great as she was as Lady Mormont in Game of Thrones, I just didn't feel that she looked like Ellie. And, It may come off as kind of mean, but I think Bella Ramsey's a kind of strange-looking individual. She's a weird-looking girl. And for me, she didn't look the part of Ellie. That being said, having watched the episode now, those fears, those issues I've had, they've kind of been washed away, right? I feel that Pedro Pascal in playing Joel very much has that vibe and feeling of Joel. When it comes to Tommy, casting Gabriel Luna is fine. You know, Tommy was never a huge, massive presence in the games. You know, he's there, but he wasn't like in the forefront. He doesn't speak all that much. So Gabriel Luna does a fine job as Tommy. Although I do wish that both Pedro and Gabriel had a little bit more of that Texas Southern drawl that the characters have in the video game. They don't really have very much of that Texas accent at all in the show, and Pedro seems to kind of like go in and go out. Like sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not, but it's a very, very subtle accent he's putting on. And I wish that there was just a little bit more, because I think that is a characteristic that, while not defining Joel and Tommy, after spending so much time with them in the games, it's just something that I come to think of when thinking about those characters. But like I said, Gabriel Luna does a fine job as Tommy. Pedro very much embodies and has that feeling of Joel. And then Bella Ramsey, even though I was unsure of her being cast as Ellie, I think after watching the episode, she does give me Ellie vibes. She does come off as the same character. Like, I don't feel, looks aside, I don't feel like these are different characters. And I think that it bodes well for the rest of the show, because if these characters didn't feel like the characters, I don't care what storytelling elements there are, I don't care what action set pieces there are, if the characters didn't feel like the characters from the game, that for me would have been an instant L. Like, the show would have been garbage if they didn't feel like the characters. And oddly enough, even though they were race swapped, these characters feel like the characters from the games, whereas in the Uncharted movie, where the races of the characters are the same as the show, those people don't feel like the characters at all. Tom Holland, in no way, shape, or form, feels like Nathan Drake. And then fucking Mark Wahlberg as Sully? Fucking please, bro. It didn't even try to sound like Sully, right? Hey, kid, look. Oh, goddamn Dorado. Fuck, that was a terrible impression, but whatever. Yeah, the cast of the show, I think, does a great job of feeling like the characters. Obviously, the woman they picked or cast to play Marlena, that was always going to be spot on, because she is Marlena in the video games. The casting of Anna Torv as Tess, I've always loved Anna Torv. I loved Anna Torv since I saw her way back in the day on Fringe, and I think that she also does a really great job of embodying the character of Tess. These all feel like the characters that I know from the games, which, again, fantastic, and without that, the show would be dead to me. So I'm very happy to report that, at least for me, I feel that the characters are damn near spot on to their video game counterparts. Overall, I loved pretty much everything about the show, or at least everything about this episode, with the exception of a few of the decisions they made regarding how they told some of the story elements. I felt like they took a lot longer to explain some things or to show some things that I think wasn't really necessary. And then I felt like other things that I wish we would have spent more time on, they shortened. And I was like, why would you do that? A great example is in the very, very beginning of the show, we spend a lot of time with Sarah, Joel's daughter. In the video game, not very much time is spent with Sarah. Within the first, I would say, 15 minutes of the game, that's it. Sarah's dead. It's not that I'm against spending more time with Sarah. I just felt that we spent a lot of time with her, and they show us all these additional things that ultimately, when it came down to it, didn't do anything for the show, right? Like, I can see if they did all this shit and then it made Sarah's death feel more impactful. I honestly don't think it did. Like, for me, honestly, I think the death in the game felt more impactful. But they're still pretty close, right? Like, the impact I felt watching Sarah die in the show is pretty comparable to what I felt watching her die in the game. And we spent far less time with her in the game than we do in the show. Great example being is, in the show, we start off with Sarah and Joel in the kitchen. They're having breakfast and stuff. There's a lot of banter back and forth. We see her notice that he's looking down at where his watch is, but there's no watch there. And we know the significance of the watch in the game. We see her go into his dresser, grab his broken watch, and steal some money from him before she leaves for school. On the way out the door to the truck, we see their next door neighbors, the Adlers, out in the front of the house. And there's some small banter between them and the Adlers, talking about how Sarah's gonna stop by after school to bake and shit like that. And there's just some time spent with the Adlers that we never meet the neighbors in the game, but they, take time to show us the Adlers. We then see Sarah go to school. We see her in class for a little bit. Then we see her leave school. We watch her board a city bus, go into the city, go to a watch repair shop, talk to the guy about what it costs, and then giving them the money to repair the watch. And then while this is happening, a woman comes from the back of the shop and starts speaking to the guy working on the watch in Arabic, saying, listen, we need to close, that's it, like, forget fixing the watch, this girl needs to leave. And there's like police cars driving outside, and she knows some shit's going down. Doesn't say what it is, but basically tells Sarah, like, you need to fucking leave, go. And so Sarah leaves and then goes back home, stops by the Adler's place, her neighbors, and she's there for a while. You see her working on her homework while the cookies that they baked are still in the oven. And then after that, she leaves, goes back home. Then Joel comes home, and then this plays out exactly like it does in the video game. The scene where they're on the couch and Sarah presents Joel with the watch, and Joel pretends like it's broken and freaks her out for a second, then asks her, how'd you pay for this? And she goes, drugs, I sell hardcore drugs. Some of the dialogue is a little bit different, but it's essentially almost the same exact scene. Now, everything that came before that, the showing the Adlers, the showing Sarah in school, the showing her going into town to the watch repair shop, all of that to now get to this scene on the couch. The game didn't have any of those scenes, yet got us to this same point on the couch in far less time, didn't spend any extra time on those things, and I don't think that the game in any way, by the time you got to this point on the couch, felt like it was needing more. Didn't feel like I needed more information. Didn't feel like there was stuff I didn't know or didn't understand that needed to be told to me. You didn't need that information. It was unnecessary. And then the same with the way that it plays out where you see infected for the first time. In the show, Sarah goes back over to the Adlers because their dog is in front of her house. So she goes to bring the dog back. And then there's a whole scene that plays out where she sees the infected inside the house and then runs out and they chase her out of the house, which the scene is fine. The scene is done well. It's filmed well. It's a great scene. But ultimately, a lot longer than it needs to be. Like, that same scene in the game is literally just the neighbor crashing through the sliding glass door in the back of the house and Joel shooting them and explaining to Sarah, yo, the neighbors are fucking sick, we need to leave. That's all the information that us as the viewer needs to know. All we need to know is, yo, the neighbors are sick and we need to get the fuck out of here. That's it. I don't need to know their names. I don't need to know how many people live in the house. I don't need to know that one of them is in a wheelchair. I don't need to know any of this information that the show felt it needed to give to us. I don't need to know any of that. Especially now as we transition to the next kind of part of this episode where now shit's starting to fucking go crazy. Shit's really starting to hit the fan. The world is losing control of itself. And I will say that this plays out almost identically to the way it does in the game. It is done so well. It feels like it's ripped right out of the video game. The scene in the game where they're trying to get out and the city's got fucking people running all over the place and runners are chasing people and there's fucking explosions. It's done very, very well. There are slight variations to it. For example, in the game, it's a gas station that explodes. In the show, it's a plane that fucking crashes. But, there's slight variations, but it's still very much done in the vein of the game, and it's done very, very well. But it's also very, very short. Like, we spend so much less time showing shit going crazy, showing shit hitting the fan. And I'm like, I would have rather have spent more time showing everything going crazy, showing them try to get the fuck out of it, showing the chaos that's ensuing. I would have rather spent more time there and less time with Sarah doing homework at the Adlers while they bake fucking oatmeal raisin cookies, right? Also, oatmeal raisin cookies? Fuck you! Fuck you, you lying piece of shit. The amount of times I bit into a oatmeal raisin cookie as a child expecting chocolate fucking chip, you can fucking go to hell, oatmeal raisin cookie. No kid wants oatmeal raisin cookies. We want chocolate fucking chip. And you look just like chocolate chip, you fucking piece of shit. Oatmeal raisin cookies, you can go to fucking hell. But anyway, oatmeal raisin cookie ran aside. Like, I wanted to see more of that. More of the craziness, more of the chaos, the insanity that's ensuing. Unless I heard doing homework at the Adlers baking fucking oatmeal raisin cookie. But listen, these are very, very small gripes. This is me as a massive fan of this franchise. As someone who played the game multiple times on PS3, bought the remaster on PS4, and played it a couple more times, right? Like a huge fan of the franchise. Nitpicking small things, small gripes I have with it. And it's just because, I could see if these scenes made the episode better or did something to enrich the story. I really don't think that they did, right? Because, listen, I have no problem with building upon the lore. Because I know that's what a lot of people are going to say is, Yo Nova, they're expanding on the lore. Yo Nova, they're doing more of the world building that they either didn't have the time to do or just didn't get around to doing in the game. Great. I have nothing against expanding the lore. I have nothing against more world building, right? Nothing against that. But I felt that these additional scenes that they put into the show, or at least into this episode, I feel that they didn't do anything to enrich the story or make the story better. I felt that by the time we had gotten to certain story beats in the episode, the time it took us to get there, I felt that we had gotten there much quicker in the game, and it wasn't because the game was rushing us to get to that point. I felt that the pacing of the game and how we got there in the game was fine. It wasn't that we were rushing. It's just that for some reason in the episode, we're spending a lot more time on these other things. Also, I don't ultimately feel that the show, at least so far, in the way they've gone about explaining things, has done it better, right? Like, I don't feel that at any point during this episode I thought to myself, you know what, the way they explain that, way better. You know what, the way they show this, much smarter or much easier to understand. Like, no. They essentially gave us the same information, they just took a lot longer to get there, and added additional information that weren't needed for us to understand what's going on. Like, whereas in the game, we went from point A to point B, then to point C in the story, the show instead went, okay, here's point A, and then here's point A.1, and A.2, and A.3, and now here we are, finally, at point B. And now point B.1, and B.2, and B.3, and now here we are, finally, at point C. And while it's cool to provide additional information, ultimately, like I said, for me, it's information that wasn't needed to get from point to point. The game didn't need to spend time showing these other things to get us from point to point. And I don't know if they decided to do it that way because they felt that viewers of the show, like the general public viewers, need more information to understand or grasp the concepts. I don't know. But, like I said, just the point-to-point moving of the story and the game, I felt just it moved at a better pace. It didn't feed us, needless information that ultimately wasn't necessary to get to the next point. And then the show makes the weird choice to spend less time on cool shit, to spend more time on unimportant shit. But again, these are small gripes from someone who just really, really loves this game. And at the end of the day, the episode overall was still a fantastic episode. I really enjoyed it, and for me, as of right now, it is the best and most faithful video game to live action adaptation that has ever been created. If you are a fan of the games, you're gonna like this show. You're gonna at least like this episode, right? I can't speak to the rest of the show because I haven't seen it in its entirety. But as far as this episode goes, I can't imagine someone being a fan of the games watching this episode and saying, yeah, not for me. Because it is so faithfully adapted from the games that, like I said, I just can't fathom a fan of the games not liking this episode. And so far, I'm very happy with the direction. So far, very happy with the casting, even though I was unsure about it. My uncertainties going into the show, I think, have been alleviated so far. I'm really liking the way that they're portraying the characters. They've done a fantastic job in making it look like the game. They are using music from the game, which is great. The Uncharted fucking movie didn't have the Uncharted theme at all, with the exception of when it played a couple of notes from the theme when they had a Nolan North cameo on a beach. Other than that, that movie had none of the Uncharted music. Whereas this show has The Last of Us music. Like, it's doing the right things, right? It's doing everything right. It's making good decisions. And I highly recommend the show to anybody, right? Anybody. People who play the game, people who didn't play the game, anybody. Because at the end of the day, for me, even if this wasn't a video game adaptation, so far for me, it's still doing a good job of being a good show. And ultimately, that's the most important thing, right? Like, if it wasn't going to be a good video game adaptation, it needed to at least be a good show, right? Fortunately, so far for me, and for those of us who are fans, so far, it's doing a good job of both being a good show and a faithful video game adaptation. And I think as fans, it's the best we could have asked for. It's the best we've ever had. And I look forward to seeing how this show tells the remainder of this fantastic story going forward. Is it a 10 out of 10 masterpiece? No. But still, it's a damn good show so far. If I had to score the episode, it's an easy 8.5 or 9 out of 10. It is not perfect, but it's still damn fucking good, and definitely better than any recent video game adaptations that have been made. Cough, cough, looking at you, Uncharted, and Halo on Paramount+. So yeah, show so far great. Super excited to see where it goes, and that's all I got for you guys on this one. And that's the video, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Have you seen the episode? What are your thoughts? And as always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. I will catch you guys on the next Supernova.